Today we're going to talk a bit about a somewhat controversial topic among Hapkido self-defense practices, and that is the wrist grab. Maybe the most common attack you practice self-defense techniques from in Hapkido, especially the basics, comes from a wrist grab. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, I don't have anyone to do demonstrations with as I explain, but I'll try to supplement by adding some video clips in during editing. To put it simply, the argument against practicing with wrist grabs is that they are impractical and unrealistic. That statistics show that nobody really will ever experience needing to escape from a wrist grab, so why learn techniques generated from it? I'm not an expert on crime statistics, but I think it's safe to say that a wrist grab is one of the least likely ways that a potential attacker would try to harm you. So I understand the criticism and where it comes from. In my experience in Hapkido, I do think wrist grab techniques are kept based on tradition, but that's not the only reason. Some claim that long ago, wrist grabs were common as opponents would grab your wrist to stop you from drawing your sword or other weapon, so learning how to deal with that was important. That makes sense, but this is why I think it's still useful today. The general consensus for Hapkido practitioners is to avoid conflict of all types, but when it is inevitable, the goal becomes subduing or immobilizing opponents without harm, using locks and pressure points. We teach that most of these finishes can happen from any number of starting points. We can see this in its simplest form in the basic arm bar. First, we see Grandmaster Kim Nam-jae demonstrating the technique from a punch. Then we see Grandmaster Ji Han-jae demonstrating the same technique from a rear elbow grab. This then can go for all techniques, showing us that the starting point doesn't matter, and we can end up where we want to be regardless. We just flow from what the opponent gives us. So why do we teach wrist grabs at all? Why not just teach our techniques for more practical attacks? The answer is simply that the wrist grab is the most primitive form of attack, and it's the easiest way to teach proper technique. It allows new students to better understand and grasp their placements when first learning self-defense. In the Jongdo-ryu curriculum, for instance, we teach white belts their self-defense techniques from wrist grabs. As the student progresses, we drift into several other attacks like strikes and clothing grabs. It's just the best way to isolate the techniques so the student can focus on only that instead of trying to juggle everything. Hapkido is a gradual art and not a program that teaches you to fight in 3 easy steps. I think the expectation a lot of times is to want to learn all the aspects of combat at once, but that just isn't reality. In general, blocking attacks is so much harder than most arts make it out to be. In a confrontation, I teach that your best bet is to try to safely close the distance and then organically gain body leverage or control of a wrist or arm, then perform the techniques you've trained and are comfortable with. I trust my odds there much more than I do getting into a boxing match. So wrist grabs are just a starting point and, in my opinion, a great way to illustrate to untrained eyes how to properly perform technique. They're a great segue into what's to come for a new Hapkido student. I hope this video explains a bit of why traditions are the way they are, and why the wrist grab maybe isn't quite as useless as it's made out to be. A lot of the criticisms we get are valid, I'll be the first to tell you that, but I also think it's important to see the big picture. Thanks for watching.